Most founders know that at some point they're going to need to build that A-player leadership and management team. But few founders actually know how to pull it off. It's easy enough to put managers in place, but building a leadership team that truly runs the day-to-day of your business without you, now that is another thing entirely. And in this video, I want to break down my 5-step framework for exactly how to put the right people in the right seats on that leadership team, and then lead and build that team so that your managers aren't just there to tell other people what to do. They are making key decisions, driving results, and they are moving your business forward without you. So first off, what does this really matter? It was interesting. I was chatting with a buddy of mine, Ashton Shanks, and we were talking about how most online startups end up plateauing at around 200 to 300K per month. It's only the top 5 to 10% of startups that end up breaking through that 7-figure run rate. And then only 5 to 10% of those that end up breaking past 300K per month and into the 500 million per month mark. Why is this? As we were discussing it, debating it, what it ultimately came down to was this exact thing. The key differentiator between a 200 and a 500K per month business is just this one thing: the leadership team. And whether the founder has developed the skills and ability to build a leadership team that is able to run the day-to-day effectively. So if you are in that 200 to 300K per month mark, or even better, you're at 150K per month, but you're seeing it come down the track, learning now how to build and lead other leaders and install a leadership team within your business could be the make or break between you hitting that next revenue plateau or breaking through to achieving your big picture goals. So now that we've determined how important it is, let's dive into how to actually do it. Obviously, the first thing we need to figure out is how do we get the right people into the right seats? Who do we hire? How do we hire? And how do we hire in the right order? So this is the framework that I give my clients when we're looking at building or restructuring their leadership team, which is that I want you to think about your leadership team as a series of hats, right? That's all it is. Hats to be worn in your business. We have a head of marketing hat, a head of sales hat, a head of operations hat, a head of client success hat, a head of product hat, right? Like that's the leadership team for your average startup. Right now, as a founder, if you don't have any managers in place, then effectively you are wearing every single hat. When you step in to make a key marketing decision, you are taking your CEO hat off, putting on your head of marketing hat, stepping into that role, making that decision, and then stepping back out. So as founders, we start from day one wearing every single leadership hat within our business. So when it comes to building a leadership team, we start by looking at the hats on the table and asking ourselves 2 questions. Number 1, which of these hats is taking up the most amount of time, right? Like maybe our client success team has gotten really big, really fast. There's a ton of people to manage, and it's pulling more and more of my time into the client success department and into that hat. Okay, well, that might be a top contender for the first hat that we need to take off of our head, put in place a leader over that department, and transfer the hat to them. So the first thing we look at is time. The hats that are eating up the most amount of your time are probably the hats that need to get hired out first so that you can then free up your time as a founder, reinvest that time into growth, and that's how we're going to maximize the ROI on that hire. So the first variable we need to look at is time. The second variable we need to look at is expertise. Which of these hats are you the worst at? Like, you're probably good at all of them, but some of these hats you are really, really exceptional at. Maybe you are a fantastic marketer or a great salesperson. Okay, well then head of marketing and head of sales should be hats that you hold on to longer versus if where you really struggle is in client success or operations. Those are hats that should come off of your head earlier. Why? Because from a business lens, what we are swapping out is a mediocre head of operations, that's you, for a exceptional head of operations. There is an ROI that is gained just by getting a better person into that role. And then we get to free up the 10, 15 hours of your week that you were spending wearing the head of operations hat, reinvest that into head of marketing and head of sales where you're fantastic and you're able to grow a disproportionate level of growth wearing the hats that you're truly excellent at. So those are the 2 variables that we need to look at when it comes to in what order should we be hiring out this leadership team? Where am I spending the most amount of time and driving the least amount of value for that time because I lack expertise in that hat. Let's identify which hat that is, and that's going to be the leader or manager that we hire in first. And then the process repeats. Same questions. Now that I've got one hat off my head, well, where's the next hat that's pulling in the most amount of time, or where I lack the most amount of expertise? That becomes the next hat. And then the next hat, and then the next hat, and that is the order in which we build and hire our leadership team. Now, if we've done this correctly, we should end up with a leadership team where every single person on that team is better in that role than we could be. And the way that I think about this is scalpels versus Swiss Army knives. Right now, as a founder, you are a Swiss Army knife. You are generally competent at a lot of stuff. You're pretty good at wearing a lot of hats. You're a Swiss Army knife. What you want when it comes to leaders and managers particularly are scalpels. You want subject matter experts, people who are exceptional at one thing. And because they only have to focus on mastering and being an expert of one thing, they do that measurably better than you would. You have a head of operations who is so much better at operations than you are. And then that becomes true for client success and product, and eventually even the things where you are excellent, marketing or sales. Over time, you free up the budget to hire in someone who lives and breathes sales, who is absolutely brilliant at it and can do an even better job in that role than maybe you can. So when it comes to building this team, we are looking for scalpels. We don't need our head of operations to be great at marketing and sales. We don't need them to have proficiency anywhere else. They just have to be excellent at the one thing that they do better than anything else. And that's where we're going to get the highest ROI from each individual hire and from our leadership team as a whole. Because when you get to step out of the day-to-day and empower the day-to-day to a team of scalpels, you are going to get a better result in each individual department of that business than you would have had otherwise, even if you were stepping in to fill the role. So this is step number one. Hire in the right order and get the right people into the right seats. Step number two then, of course, is, well, how the heck do we know who the right person is? And what this generally comes down to is, how do I know whether I should internally promote someone into that role or if I need to go out and hire somebody in? Here's how I think about this. In a startup environment, your managers are going to have to do two things. They're going to need to manage, right? To lead that department and that team. And they're probably still going to end up executing to an extent within that role. So your head of sales will also probably still hop on the phone and close your most important whale clients. So they have to be exceptional at both. They have to be a great doer and they have to be a great leader. But as your company scales and grows, they are going to be spending more and more of their time in that thinking leadership role than they are in the doing role. So if I have to pick one, I'm going to pick a manager who is a better manager than they are a doer, an executor in the role. So let me give you an example. I see this all the time on sales teams. We take our top salesperson, and because they're such an exceptional savage closer, we're like, all right, this is the person who deserves to be promoted into our head of sales role. But here's the thing. What does a head of sales actually do? Hop on leadership team meetings, do team trainings, build CRMs and data dashboards, manage people and hold them accountable to KPIs? The head of sales role involves a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with being a great salesperson. And so most often we promote our top performer, not realizing that accidentally all we've done is we've taken our top closer and swapped them for a mediocre head of sales. We've actually promoted them out of their zone of excellence and doubled up the cost of the business. We lost a great closer and gained a mediocre head of sales. That is a terrible trade, no matter how you look at it. So when it comes to internally promoting, my rule of thumb is I will only promote somebody into this role if I genuinely believe that with training and support, they will be a better manager than they are a doer, than they are a performer in the role. Otherwise, if our top salesperson just wants to show up every day and close like an absolute savage, let them. Keep them in that role. Figure out how to grow their title, their compensation, give them the growth that they're looking for, but keep them in the role where they are truly set up for success and can be excellent doing what they love every single day. Do not promote people just because they are the top performer in the role. Only promote them if you genuinely believe they have the ability to grow into an exceptional manager and eventually become an even better manager than they were a performer. So my rule of thumb is that I will always seek to internally promote where possible, but only if that individual passes that standard. If I look at my team right now and I don't see anybody who has leadership or management ability, then I'm going to go and hire in. Because for my business, it is so much more important that I get the right manager in the seat, even if it comes at the expense of an opportunity that someone on my team was hoping to claim, but truly was not the right fit for. Okay, so those two steps close the gap around the who. Who should we select to fill these critical roles on the bench? And if we've done this correctly, we end up with a leadership team of scalpels, experts in every single role, who are not just world-class subject matter experts within their department. They are also incredible managers and leaders of people. Here's why this is so important, is that your managers and leaders ultimately are responsible for driving profit. They are responsible for making sure that within their department, that team is performing as well as possible, as efficiently, as effectively, at the highest level of performance possible. They are responsible for making the key decisions that are going to drive that area of the business forward and ultimately achieve the goals and the targets that you set for them. And they are responsible for working with your head of operations to make sure that the team structure and the systems in that department are set up for maximum scalability and profit. So ironically, by trying to save dollars by internally promoting so we don't have to pay really big salaries and go out and hire managers in, we end up costing ourselves profit because we put unexperienced managers in these critical positions that end up draining our profit down the road through hidden profit leaks. This is why leadership is one of 6 what I call hidden profit centers hiding in plain sight inside of your business. If you want to know what the other 5 are and where exactly hidden profit is leaking out of your business right this second, then go ahead and grab a copy of the Hidden Profit Finder. This is a tool that me and my team built to help our clients diagnose exactly where in their business is profit right now leaking out of the company and what can we do to find and reclaim it. So it's a totally free tool. It takes 10 minutes or less. You can grab that link in the description below, and it's going to help you identify, do you have the right leadership team in place, or are your leaders currently costing you profit? All right, so now that we've got the who taken care of, now we got to figure out the how. How do we structure a leadership team so that these managers can perform at their highest, make their own decisions, drive their own results, and really start running and managing the day-to-day of your business without you? Steps 3, 4, and 5 in this framework are delegating decision-making, restructuring communication, and setting strategic clarity. These are the 3 key pillars that your leadership team is going to need to be set up for success to run your business. So the first one, decision-making. When we build our frontline team, so not our managers, but just our boots on the ground team, what we learn how to do is delegate tasks, right? We're delegating tasks, we're delegating execution. When it comes to managers, we need to learn how to delegate decisions. And that is way harder because delegating a task is pretty straightforward. It's like, all right, here's the SOP, do the task this way, now you do it. But delegating a decision, how do we delegate a decision? How do we teach someone to think like we do, to decide like we do, to pull in the right information, think about the right things, and when it matters most, make the right call? This is where I see most founders fail when it comes to the management teams that they've built because they have managers in place. They've delegated the tasks and the execution, but they haven't delegated the decision-making. Great leadership teams are ones where the founder has pushed decision-making downwards, where every single leader runs their department almost as the mini CEO. They are the mini CEO for that department within the business, meaning they handle all of the problems within that department. They make all of the critical decisions within that department, and they are ultimately responsible for the outcomes and the targets associated with that team. So how do we do that? How do we train and delegate decision-making? Well, the first thing goes all the way back to hiring, which is we need to find scalpels. We need to find people who are actually better in that subject matter expertise than even we are. Because if we have hired the right people into the right seats, chances of them making the right decision go up astronomically. They've got the experience, they've got the knowledge, they've got the data, they understand the situation. They are much more likely to make a better decision than what we could even make. And we've created that simply by putting the right people into the right seats. The second thing that we need to offer them is context. So Netflix has this great leadership principle that they call context, not control. Control leadership looks like, I'm gonna tell you what to do and then you go do it. I'm gonna make the decision and then you go execute it. That's control leadership. But under control leadership, we're not delegating decision making. We're holding all of the decisions to ourselves and then having our team go and execute on those decisions. It's ultimately less scalable because you end up being stuck having to make all of the decisions for everyone. And it also gives you a worse result because the bigger your business gets, the harder it is to make the right decision across the entire company. So that's control leadership. You can give it a shot, but you're gonna have a bad time. Instead, I would recommend context leadership. Context leadership looks like I've put the right person in the right seat, and then I have given them all of the context that they need to make the right decisions on their own. So context is all of the information. It's the strategy, it's the mission, it's the core values, it's the strategic priorities and the game plan for the business. It's what we've tried in the past and what we've learned. It's your vision for where you want to take the company. All of that is context. And while that might feel like a lot, the reality is if we've put the right people in the right seats and then we've given them all the important contextual information, why wouldn't they make the right decision? And they can make 1 decision, 10 decisions, 100 decisions every single day without us, so long as they are the right person and we've given them all the critical context that they need to know in order to make that call. So our job as leaders shifts from telling people what to do to providing context. The next time your manager comes to you with a question, the question I want you to ask yourself is, what is the context that this person would need in order to make the right decision on their own? And then instead of giving them the answer to the question, refocus the conversation around providing context, filling in all of the information gaps, and then transferring ownership of that decision back to them. Now that you understand all this context, what do you think we should do? And that's how we get to start training and delegating decision-making downwards. Strategic clarity is the #1 most important piece of context that your leadership team needs. Strategic clarity, very simply, is where the heck are we going and how do we intend to get there? You right now have a vision in your mind for where you want to take your business, how you want to get it there, where you want it to end up. But I can promise you, your management team does not see that vision as clearly as you do. They need that vision. They need that context in order for them to make decisions that are ultimately going to stay in alignment with the vision that you have for the business. So the best founders don't just provide context, they actually bring their leadership team into the process of setting that strategy together. When you build a leadership team, you need to introduce a new layer of communication within your business, which is strategic decision-making. Once a quarter, you should be bringing together your managers and leaders and setting strategy with them. It's still your vision. You're still the person who decides, hey, here is where we're going. This is the end point that I want us to drive towards as a business. Now, how do we think we're going to get ourselves there? When you bring your leadership team into the strategy process, you do a couple of things. The first thing you do is you get to bring all of their knowledge, their experience, and their data to the table, which ultimately is going to help you make better decisions. Again, if we have hired Scalpels, we should be relying on our leadership team for their insights and their experience on how do we get ourselves to our goals. So your strategy and decision-making will actually just become better. The second thing it does is that it secures buy-in and ownership. When your leadership team feels like they are a part of the decision-making process, all of a sudden, those decisions are their decisions. And they deeply understand the why behind those decisions, the reasoning, the arguments, the logic. They were a part of the conversation. Their perspectives and their insights were heard and valued and contributed to that conversation. So when the final decision gets made around here's where we're going and here's how we're going to get there, even if it's a decision that they disagree with, because they were a part of the conversation and they understand all of the context that went into that decision, they are going to be able to take that decision and execute it better, faster, and in alignment with the strategic thinking behind it because they were invited to the table. So as leaders, this is hard because before we had managers, we didn't need to get sign off from anybody else to make a decision on how we're going to run our business. In the short term, it slows us down to have to bring our leadership team together to be a part of that decision-making process. But in the long term, it speeds us up because a leadership team armed with all of the strategic context plus ownership over those key decisions is going to be more bought in, more engaged, more motivated. They are going to run faster, they are going to run further, and they are going to run alongside you as opposed to behind you, waiting for you to always hand down the next decision or the next piece of strategy. Which brings us to the final step of this framework, which is communication. When you bring in a leadership team, you need to fundamentally restructure how communication and information flows throughout the business. On the org chart, your managers are going to sit between you as the C-suite and your frontline team. Their job in the middle of the org chart is to do two things. Top down, their job is to take your vision and the strategic decisions that you have made as a team and cascade them downwards in the form of execution. Their job is to be the bridge between your vision and your decisions and the work that gets done every single day. So they need to translate and filter that decision-making downwards. Their job is to also filter critical information and data upwards. When you install managers, you, the founder, lose visibility into what's happening within the day-to-day of the business. You're no longer talking directly to clients, so you don't know what clients are complaining about. You're no longer hopping on sales calls, so you're not sure what objections your sales team is getting. You lose visibility, you lose data. So your manager's job is to be collecting all of the data by working alongside that frontline team and then filtering what the most critical, the most essential information is and cascading that upwards so that you can make the best strategic decisions and continue to guide the business forward effectively. So managers are a filter in two directions. They cascade your vision down and translate it into execution. And then they filter critical data upwards so that you stay in the loop around what is most important so you're able to continue to make the best decisions. This is an absolutely essential role. And the place this happens is on leadership meetings. Leadership meetings are not there for you to just go around, ask what everybody's working on, and then tell them what to do. Leadership meetings are where you as a team are debating and deciding on the strategic direction for the business, that's the top down, and where your leadership team is reporting upwards the critical information that's coming out of their department in the business. So once we have the right people in the right seats, we need to arm them with these three things. We need to delegate decision-making through context, not control. We need to bring them in to the strategic decision-making process and transfer ownership over those decisions to them. And then we need to restructure our communication so that our managers are able to cascade those decisions downward and filter critical information upwards. If we have done all of this, then what we have successfully done is built a leadership team that can solve their own problems, run the day-to-day without you, make their own decisions, drive a better result within that department than even you could, and do all of that without you required to keep the day-to-day of the business running and growing. So that's it. The 5-step framework to building a world-class leadership team. Now, right now you might be thinking, Jhana, this all sounds well and good, but right now my team is coming to me for absolutely everything. Fear not. We see that all the time. So much so that I created an entire video breaking down exactly why your team is still dependent on you and how to break that dependency so that your team can start executing tasks and solving their own problems without you. You can see it right up there, and I will catch you on the next one.